we try really hard to schedule the weekends off. And we managed it this weekend. So, down to the allotment for us, and a good old bug hunt. First stop is always at the pond, to have a good old look out for newts, who were well in evidence today. This time of year I suspect that they're spawning. You can just see a little face peeking out from the shadow centre screen there. We're very fond of them. Now, I'm no expert on newts, but I think we've got these down as the smooth newt. I'd love to be corrected if anybody out there does know. That little ripple is indicative of one that's just disappeared, having been alarmed by me. You can just see one there, under the lily pad. A little tail wriggling, which again is making me suspect that they're spawning. And then another more usual vision of them darting away, and then the legs wriggling away there from under the shadows as well. Lovely guys, very fond of our newts. If you ever find one in the winter, they're quite often out of the pond, and they hit you with a guilt trip. They're very good at playing dead. I've dug them up every now and again and been filled with guilt, and then you just spot a little wink as they give the game away that they're not actually dead. They're just playing possum. So yeah, if you do ever find one and you think that you've killed it, do just have a good old look and double check. Here's our solitary bee condominium. You probably see these in garden centres, and maybe you've got one in the back garden and you've been a little bit disappointed at the lack of action. But it took these quite a few years before the bees found them, and then when they did, even though they're solitary bees, they only pair up. They're sociable rather than social, like the honeybee is. And there's just a male and a female laying their eggs in each of those tubes. They do find them eventually, and your first sign is the little plugs of clay, but if you do keep an eye out, every now and again you will catch one going in, and that's always a lovely sign. There's one there. Over now to the black plastic for one of my favourite things, having a good old hunt around for slowworms. Now, I have a look but don't touch policy with these, which I find very hard because I love them. But when alarmed, they can shed their tail, and they do this quite often down on the allotment because there's quite a few cats. But yes, if they shed their tail because you're handling them, it can fill you with guilt because it thrashes around all over the place and it's quite gory. I recently had a conversation with another beekeeper who talking about slowworms, and his argument was very much, well, they're a snake, aren't they? Because if they walk like a snake and quack like a snake, then they must be a snake. But I do understand that they are technically classified as a legless lizard because they, amongst other features, they can blink, and I think snakes don't do that tail shedding thing either. So I'm sure there's other reasons as well, which might be an interesting Google. Back to the bees, and here's some lovely foraging behaviour. Honeybees and some bumblebees as well. Yes, we're very fond of watching the foraging behaviour. Bees mark a flower when they've been to it with another one of these pheromones that there was some interesting research done where a chap washed flowers and washed the pheromones off and watched bees go to flowers which had already had their nectar depleted by another bee visiting, which I think is kind of mean, and you don't really want to waste their time. And so yes, when you watch them, you'll quite often see them sort of bounce away from one to another. There's a nice zebra spider scooting away. You'll see them just sort of skip one particular flower, and you wonder why maybe that is, and that's the answer, is that they've marked it with this scent to tell other bees not to waste their time for a while, and typically that wears off at about the same rate as the flower replenishes the nectar. Speaking of nectar, not long now for the bramble blossom, source of a great deal of our hope for the future, bramble blossom being a major contributor to pollen, to honey harvests. Little nest of baby garden spiders just hatched out. If that's your kind of thing, I don't mind them really, but try not to touch them where I can help it. A little bit more pollen gathering, because the bees don't take the weekend off, but we found our time very restorative on the allotment, doing a great deal of not much. And Monday now, as I record this voiceover for you, and just catching a moment between bee jobs, even though it's raining today. I've got so much to do, and so our weekends we find very valuable. finish off with a little favourite of mine, the shield bug there. I hope you've enjoyed it. Back to normal service and bees next time.
You bugger. Just as I hit record, I had a leaf cutter bee eating the leaf here and then she flew off.